So my name's Amy Christensen, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Sun Valley Institute for Resilience. And we founded the Institute just a year ago. Go to the next slide, please. And we're very happy to be bringing you Solarize Blaine. Solarize Blaine is the first part of our first program, which is focused on energy, because when we founded the Institute a year ago, it was really growing out of some realizations that we had a lot of risks facing our community around the fires that we're seeing, the changes in snowfall, the availability of water, the water calls, the issues that we're coming up against, and the need to diversify the economy and really take advantage of the incredible opportunity that we have in Blaine County to deploy the technologies, the business models, the new investment structures that are happening around the world. And we can be the petri dish and take advantage of the opportunity of what's happening around the world, and it'll strengthen our economy and help address some of these risks around energy and food and water. So that's the Institute's purpose. Next slide. We have partnered with the Rockefeller Foundation, who's been leading work globally around resilience and wanted to work with a community to be a model to deploy smart strategies to diversify our economy and deal with these changes in our climate around the world. We're also working with Arizona State University and Boise State University to learn from smart strategies that are happening elsewhere and also track what we're doing and hopefully take it up and out to other communities. And we're producing publications, including how we can do more local investment in our economy here locally. Next slide. We had a first forum last July, July 9th through 11th, I think it was last year, and Senator Cory Booker was our keynote speaker. Next slide, please. And we had great speakers from all these organizations, global, local, from the Local Food Alliance and Idaho's Bounty, the Idaho Department of Commerce and INL, to global organizations like Solar City and the Rockefeller Foundation. And this year, our forum is going to be July 10th through 12th. Next slide. And the energy program. Why are we doing Solarize Blaine? Why are we doing an energy program? Basically, as you might have seen, if you remember back to Christmas Eve 2009, we had a 24-hour power outage. And that was because our two transmission lines that come into Haley went down one after the other. So we had 24 hours in the heart of our tourist season, power went down. 35% of our energy on that grid, not only the old grid, it's a very dirty grid. 35% of it is from coal power. Coal generation obviously undermines the quality of our environment, which we rely on here a great deal. So we have all these risks. And also, we pay for that energy and send it out of the valley. All that money, about $80 million a year for our energy, leaves the valley. So let's turn that into an opportunity and invest in locally generated energy that's going to be more reliable because it's here locally. And the first thing we can do that makes financial sense now is going solar. So I'm super excited because we brought on board at the Institute Katie Bray, who I'm going to introduce next, and Katie's running Solarize Blaine and is running our energy program, and she's run 8 of these programs before she came to the Wood River Valley. She actually grew up partly in Haley, partly in Minnesota, so we were happy she wanted to come back, and ran them in the Southeast, where it's also very cheap power like we have, and understood how to make this program a success here. And our goal is to make a more reliable energy system that's cleaner, with lower prices, and create jobs here in the valley. So with that, I'll introduce Katie to talk about Solarize Blaine.
Okay, thanks Amy, and thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'm really excited by this turnout, and I also want to thank Al and the Sustainability Center for this beautiful space and his delicious appetizers that he's made for us back there. We want to thank Sawtooth Brewery for the beer, and also a quick shout out to our volunteers. We rely really heavily on our volunteers. So we have a few of them here tonight. If you just raise your hand, and yeah, we'll clap for them. And also a shout out to Russell back there behind the bar. He's our intern and behind the scenes guy and instrumental in this program, so couldn't do it without him. All right, so yeah. All right, I'm going to remind you what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'm going to talk about our program, just remind you how Solarize Blaine works. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chris, our outreach coordinator, to go over the basics of solar power, how it works. And then we will have John with Site-Based Energy talk about our pricing and equipment for our program. And then we'll open it up to you guys to ask whatever questions we missed. We also have 2 computers back there, so if you like what you hear and you want to sign up for our program, we can help you do that back there, or you can do it at home. So just a little background, we didn't invent the solarized model. It actually started in Portland, Oregon in 2009. A bunch of neighbors got together there. They wanted to go solar, and they came up with this program doing the bulk purchasing and education and outreach, and they actually got 500 people in their neighborhoods in Portland to go solar in a year and a half. So it's an incredible model. It's been successful all over the country since then. There are at least 350 solarized campaigns active in 20 to 30 different states in the country. As Amy mentioned, I ran a handful of them in North Carolina, and we had similar results to Portland. We helped 480 families go solar in about a year and a half. So we're really excited. Solarized Blaine, we are the first solarized program to hit Idaho. I think it's going to be one of the most successful yet. We already have 115 people from Blaine County signed up, and we've already signed 3 contracts. So 3 people are actually right now in the process of installing solar panels through our program. So Solarized Blaine, we are here to make it cheaper and easier for everyone in Blaine County to go solar. So we've made it cheaper by negotiating a bulk purchasing discount that is up to 20% below the market average. And that's available through our program until June 30th. And then we simplified the process of going solar as much as we could by pre-vetting the installers, the technologies, organizing free site assessments for everybody, doing events like this one tonight. And we also worked with our local banks to create financing options so that you can finance your solar projects. So we'll talk more about that in the coming slides. And lastly, from me, if you like what you hear tonight, many of you have already done this, but if you haven't, please sign up for the program. The first step to do that is to fill out our assessment form. And it takes about 5 minutes. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, we have some volunteers who can help you do it here, or you can go home and do it at solarizedblaine.org and click on the free solar assessment or get started button. Just a show of hands, is anyone here already enrolled in our program? All right, bunch of fresh people, that's great. So after you enroll, what we'll do is then send an installer out to your house, and they'll call you to schedule your free solar site assessment, where they actually get up on the roof and take measurements. And then they'll deliver you a proposal after that outlining what your solar system would look like, how much it would cost, the payback, all that. And then it's up to you to decide if you want to do it or not. We hope that either way you will talk about it and help us spread the word and share this with your friends, your neighbors, your families, because the other key tenet of our program is that we have what we call tiered pricing, and we'll show you what that looks like later on. But essentially, it means the more people who go solar in Blaine County before June 30th, the cheaper it's going to be for everybody in Blaine County. And it doesn't matter when you sign your contract, everybody will get the same final discount. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our outreach coordinator, Chris Hansen, to walk you through solar and how it works.
Yeah, let's give a hand for Katie. My name is Chris Hansen, and I'm a community organizer here working for Solarized Blaine. And it's my job to kind of talk to you about why is now the time to go solar. We've got 5 reasons up here, starting with the incredible solar resource in the Wood River Valley. I've got to admit that I'm new to the Wood River Valley, been here less than a year, but would somebody kind of help me figure out what the Mayday Blue is? Do you guys know what Mayday Blue is? Anybody heard of that term? The Mayday Blue, yeah, Billy Mann was telling me about it, one of our solar installers. It's evidently when you're riding this chairlift up the mountain and you see the blue skies up above you. I'm seeing a couple nods, a couple people nodding. Okay. Well, all of this is to say that you have an incredible solar resource here within the Wood River Valley. And go back, yeah. Forward one. Yeah. One more. There we go. So this is a map that kind of shows us exactly what sort of solar resource that we have here. We're definitely not down in the southwest, but we actually have the same solar resource as northern Florida, as Miami. So those of you who have lived here for a while understand that we have about 250 days a year. In the summertime, you're looking at about 15 hours worth of sunlight at sometimes. It's why we keep so many dermatologists employed and so many sunglass makers employed here within the valley. So what kind of solar are we talking about here? It's solar photovoltaics, so PV. These panels convert sunlight into electricity to power your home, go from DC to AC. Systems are installed on the roof or on the ground. The warranty for these panels is 25 plus years. The best thing about solar is you plug them in and you forget about it. I can't do the forget about it too well, but there's no moving parts, right? That's the best thing about these panels. Talk just a little bit about basic terminology. Two terms. We're talking about capacity, first of all, which is the amount of panels that you're actually putting on your roof or on the ground mount in terms of kilowatts. And then the production, right? So those of you who are looking at your Idaho Power bills, they measure it in kilowatt hours. So how many kilowatt hours you're able to produce with those number of panels. On average, a residential system is going to be between 2 and 15 kilowatts. This one here, the ground mounted, that's a 4 kilowatt system. Commercial-wise, this is a 20 kilowatt system. That's usually anywhere between 10 to 100 kilowatts, 40 to 400 panels. So why are we going solar? Why do we feel like this is a good idea? I think that you first have to talk about the environment. You have to talk about what's happening with the environment and the way in which our ecosystem and our entire world's ecosystem is heating up. This is a graph from NASA. Over the last 650,000 years, we've never had the level of CO2 concentrations that we have now. And this was actually in 2013, I believe, so it's still going upward. And I don't need to get too much into the doomsday scenarios, but the atmosphere is getting warmer, ice is melting, things are happening, things are changing. And this is directly due to our use of fossil fuels. So again, talking about the environment and talking about where we get our power here in the Wood River Valley, you can see coal at 38.8%, hydro at 38.1%. Again, this is not a clean, affordable energy that we were able to get here in Idaho. So our carbon footprint every year in the valley, we send $80 million out of our community to buy electricity for companies in Boise, Wyoming, North Dakota, Pennsylvania. And you have to consider that that's $80 million that aren't going towards local businesses, aren't going towards local jobs, are not going towards local banks that are able to extend credit to people here within the valley. So we're losing that. I like this picture too. I'm not sure how this is a recreation area here at Jim Bridger, but evidently it is. This Jim Bridger plant produces 16.5 million tons of carbon dioxide. It's the number 13 most dirty plant within the United States. This is where we get a lot of our power from Idaho Power. Also, hydropower, sometimes referred to as renewable, I guess. If you think about it in terms of restoring our native fish populations, it doesn't make sense as a renewable source of power. It also doesn't make sense as like a real constant and certain form of power as well. As we're seeing the climate change, the runoff is going to be different from year to year. We're not really sure exactly how much we can count on hydropower as well. So this is a graph of, actually I should go back. Why go solar? It's a good investment, right? Our first option is environment. Our second is it's a good investment, right? Environment and then economics. We got this graph from Rachel Dyke, who's the director of marketing at Sunrun, one of the bigger solar installers here within the country. This is just basically showing you where your money goes to Idaho Power if you don't install solar, and where it goes after 30 years if you do install solar. So depending on the size of your system, depending on the payback model, you know, you're saving roughly $30,000 that could be going to Idaho Power. These are conservative estimates too that Rachel provided us with, so just something to keep in mind. Resale value, something that we haven't really talked about too much. A study by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has said that homes sell 20% faster if they've got solar on top of them, for an average of about $15,000 more. So if you're thinking about it in terms of your house and resale value, it's a plus. Another reason to go, environment, economics, and then this kind of has to do with economics, but it's certainty, right? Certainty in the power that you're buying. Power rates have risen 40% over the last decade, on average about 4% a year. I just saw within the Idaho Mountain Express, they were raising them again, $2.50, I think, that there was some charge that Idaho Power was doing. So you can see that this is just slowly going up, and actually not even slowly going up, 40% in the last decade. That's a pretty big increase. So providing or installing solar allows you to hedge against this market, right? It allows you some price certainty. It allows you to lock in a few of your levels. Tax incentives, one of the bigger things as well. You've got a federal residential tax credit, 30% right off the top. Then the Idaho residential tax deduction, 40%, that's the first year, and then 20% for the next 3 years. So you're looking about 7 to 8% of the total cost of the system reduced through that tax deduction. This is through principal and second homes. They both qualify. You can carry credit over to the next tax year, and there's no cap on PV systems, which we're talking about here. So, for example, a $20,000 system will end up costing about $12,400. Customers should consult a tax advisor, too. Katie and I and Russell are not tax advisors, so talk to your financial guy. I should also mention, too, Mike, do you want to just wave real quick? Mike Slaughter with DL Evans. When we talk a little bit more about solar financing, Mike's a great guy to talk with and a great resource, too. Net metering, this continues to make economic sense. This continues to build the economic case for solar. It allows you to put extra power on the grid. It's when the meter is spinning backwards. It's one of the great assets that we have within Idaho. There's a couple other states that have it as well. You receive a credit on your bill. It's not in cash, but they credit you at the end of the year. You can use this credit when you're using more than you're producing. So July, August, September, those kind of months, you'll be seeing the meter running backwards. The utility charges you only for the net power that you consume, and no batteries are needed for this. You kind of use the grid as your batteries. But if you want to talk about batteries, Katie. So Elon Musk and Tesla, their new opportunity to increase the amount of solar you use and to increase your reliability. Again, that reliability of power, add 25 to 35% more on the cost of your system. Typical cost running about $6,000. Just a personal story, I've talked with a guy who's out in Indian Creek, and Amy mentioned the power outage that you guys had over Christmas Eve. This guy was able to run the lights on his Christmas tree and the coffee pot during that outage because he had installed batteries with his solar PV panels. And he's had those panels on his house now for about 8 years. So you can combine that with batteries. That allows you for that better reliability. Next slide. And lastly, I think that one of the best reasons why solar is a good idea and one of the best arguments that we can make is that there are people in the valley that have already adopted solar. Earlier I was hearing somebody overhearing somebody talking about Scott Runkle, who's been a great proponent of solar power in Northridge. He's got this, I think it's a 3 kilowatt system on his house in Northridge. You know, you're getting an endless supply of free electricity and that priceless feeling of knowing you're producing clean energy. Scott's also been a leader at the community school. They just installed a 15 kilowatt system there as well. This is a family in Hewlin Meadows, the Olsons. And this I thought was a really good reason as well. I mean, they're looking at this long term. They're looking at being in the valley long term. And they knew that this was the place where they were going to raise their daughters. And when you look at that over long-term horizon, solar is increasingly viable. These folks, I wasn't actually able to get a picture of them because they're still always working on their house, but some of you might know Elizabeth Jeffrey and Rob Lawning. they just feel like it's an appropriate decision to make in this day and age. So they're much more convinced about the environmental message. Climate change is real, and the need to go local is more and more pressing. We're not doing it just because of the economics. You feel like we're benefiting in other ways too. So this is in Old Town Haley, about, I think it's 3rd and Carbonate is their place. Go ahead. A businessman as well. Some of you guys have probably driven by Patrick Buchanan's place at State Farm, just on Highway 75 there. Again, he's looking at it in the terms of both investing and the environment. What are you investing in? I care about the philosophy of green investment. It's a way for me to be a stockholder for something larger, for my community, for the environment. I care about both of those things long term more than anything else. So what we see when we have people that have installed solar, and for those of you who have already signed up and are looking for it, you're looking long term. These are long term investments, and you're looking to get that payback in different ways. So what makes a good solar site? You own the building, the roof's in good repair, you have a good solar window, you have federal tax liability, and capital or equity in your home. The solar window, roof area facing southwest, east, southeast, southwest, that's everywhere but north, right. As little shading as possible, 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight, and an open roof area of at least 100 square feet. Why Solarize Blaine? Why this program? We've been able to negotiate with the installers to get quality equipment. Tier 1 panels, these are good panels, not only from a quality perspective, but also from an economic perspective. These are companies that have been looked at, kind of audited. They're going to be around for the next 20 years. The inverters are kind of the same way as well. These are Tier 1, these are the top of the heap. Online monitoring is offered, a 5-year workmanship warranty with both of our installers, Sagebrush and Site-Based Energy, and equipment warranties. So the panels themselves, 25 years, the inverters are 12 years, the racks are 20 years. We'll hear a little bit more about that from John at Site-Based. Residential pricing. So this is our tiered pricing structure. It's a little complex. There's a lot of columns and graphs going on here, but essentially the thing to understand is that for every 10 systems that are installed, roughly, you're looking at a price discount. And if we get 40 systems installed throughout the valley, that on average is going to save a person for an average system about $3,500 if we hit this final tier at 200 kilowatts plus. So the more people that are able to sign on, the more momentum that we're able to generate, the more panels that our installers are able to order, they get a discount on bulk shipping and bulk pricing. It's like shopping at Costco, right? So our installers, Alt Energy, these are the folks that are doing commercial along with Sagebrush Solar, and Sagebrush Solar and Site-Based Energy are doing our residential. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to John with Site-Based Energy.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. My name is John Reuter. I'm with Site-Based Energy. We are a Ketchum-based company, and we also have an office in Boise. So if you sign up for the program, we'll give you a phone call or an email right off the bat. And my first objective is to kind of make sure that your expectations with solar are realistic in terms of the out-of-pocket costs, how much you can save, what your payback is, and if you're happy with those things, phase 2 will be come down and take a look at your house. So when we do that, we'll be looking at your roof details, see if you have shading, locate a wiring pathway to run a wire from your solar panels, and then also looking at your power bills. And the reason that we look at your power bills is to determine how much of a percentage offset that we can do, and also make sure that we don't put in more solar panels than the amount of energy that you currently use. As we go through the next few slides, we're going to talk about a 5 kilowatt system as a point of reference. So what you see here, this is a system that we installed in East Fork. This is a 5.1 kilowatt system. So this is a 16 panel system. And go ahead with the next slide. So what does it cost? Solar panels have come down considerably in the last 5 years. Reports say maybe as much as 80%. I would say that a typical solar system residentially costs somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000. Now that said, we've done systems for $9,000 and we've done residential systems for $90,000. So this is plug and play. We can go small, we can do huge. Ultimately, your system cost will be relative to the size of your system, how many solar panels you have, and also how many people use the Solarize Blaine program. Because as we learned from Chris, the more that sign up, the cheaper it gets. Two systems that we have recently installed. Here you see a 3.9 kilowatt system in Woodside. This is enough panels for this particular homeowner to produce 170% of their annual electricity. Now, why would we do that? That client wanted to get away from natural gas, so in the future, in the next year, we are moving to electric space heating, electric water heating, and hopefully, says, an electric car. So this was a small system for a low energy use client that takes her completely off from having an energy bill. Over here is the better picture that Chris was asking for in downtown Haley. That's a 1.8 kilowatt system, and that was sized to be enough solar panels to offset their electric bill at their previous house before they built this more efficient house. So this should also cover all of their electrical needs. Go ahead. So payback. Using that 5 kilowatt system example, a 5 kilowatt system would generate somewhere in the vicinity of 7,700 kilowatt hours per year. That is roughly $733. And your payback would be, a simple payback would be somewhere in the vicinity of 14 to 16 years. We have had systems that get lower than that. It relies on optimal conditions. One of the things that I like to think about more than what's your payback is, well, if I assume this system's going to last for 30 years, and the reality is it would last longer, is what's my avoided cost to Idaho Power? So in this particular system, a 5 kilowatt system, your avoided cost to Idaho Power is $38,000. Now, some of that is the cost of the system itself, roughly $15,000. But basically, your lifetime savings is considerable. Here on the side here, this is a 10.9 kilowatt system that we recently installed in Lake Creek. Chris mentioned a ground mount. That's what a ground mount system might look like, where instead of using your roof, we've got a nice south-facing hillside, and that's 2 arrays of panels, one in front and one in back. So your payback is going to depend on the size of the system. A larger system has a faster payback because the cost of panels is less. Your orientation, and if it's shaded, and then your ability to take advantage of the tax incentives. Go ahead. So one of the things that we push for is if you're going to do solar, if you're going to make the investment to do a little bit of solar, you might as well maximize the system based on the amount of roof area you have and how big your energy bill is. And the reason for that is because for reference here, if we did a 3 kilowatt system, that would be something like 10 panels. Your installed price with Solarize Blaine, this is the beginning price, would be $460 per watt, and your 30-year savings would be about $13,000. Now, if we skip ahead and we do a larger system, we did 7 kilowatts, and we did 22 panels, you can see the installed price is considerably less, and this is assuming nobody signs up for Solarize Blaine. It gets even lower if people do. And you can see a 30-year savings of over $30,000. One more note on this. This is how the price drops as more people sign up. So if you were to say, have nobody else except for you sign up for the program, and you put in a $21,000 system, you'd have no Solarize rebate, and you'd have, these are your federal and state incentives for a net investment of $13,000. But if we get a bunch of people to sign up, we go to 40 installs, same initial investment. We have an almost $3,000 rebate from Solarize Blaine. The incentives federally are actually a little bit less because you've put in a cheaper system, but ultimately you come out ahead on your net investment. This is a cumulative cash flow for your 5 kilowatt system. All the financial gurus like to talk about cumulative cash flows. I like to think of it as your first kilowatt costs $20,000 and the rest are free, because it's just a happier way to do it. You say, I'm going to make this initial investment, and then you're getting free power from there on out. But basically, we look at a system there after tax credits is roughly $13,000. Around year 15, we have our payback time. The reason that this graph disappears for 2 lines is because at year 15, we also expect to replace your inverter. And that's roughly a $1,200 to $1,500 task right now. Hopefully in 15 years, hopefully that's a $700 task, given the way that prices are going down. Go ahead, Katie. So the payback does have some assumptions. We assume that you'll replace your inverter at 15 years. We assume that between wiring and inverter and all these other parts that you'll have some 14% system losses. We assume 0.25% as your operation and maintenance costs. For frame of reference, that'd be like $40 on a $15,000 system. So basically maybe once every 3 years you call your solar contractor and have them check a few things. This is a big one. This is what Chris was showing, that the rate of Idaho Power that you've paid over the last 10 years has gone up. The 10-year average is a 4% rate increase. So when we're calculating your payback, we are assuming that the price of electricity from Idaho Power will continue at that 4% escalation. This is a 5 kilowatt system that we installed in the Heatherlands. So this is a question I get more than any other question. And I wanted to address this because what you see with these yellow bars is how much energy we get, or how much solar radiation we get by month. So if you see January and February, pretty darn small. By the time we get into the heart of the summer and shoulder seasons, we get considerably more power. So these winter months, even if your solar panels are covered 100% in snow, the amount of energy that you actually produce during that time is relatively small. So I don't like to encourage anybody to get up on their roof in the middle of the winter. Doesn't mean you can't, but your benefit from doing so is relatively small. And if you know that, we go look at a roof and know that snow isn't going to slide, a lot of times in the proposal, I'll just write those months off, or say 50% shading or something like that to give you a more conservative estimate. Now, there are other cases where on a steep roof, typically 6 or 7, 12 and steeper, the snow is just going to shed, so it's not an issue. Go ahead. And then finally, energy bills before and after. We got a signed contract this year from a family in Bellevue for the Solarize Blaine program. This is the projection for them. So the red bar here is if you do nothing, which means that in the winter months they pay roughly $80, $85 a month on their electric bill. As we get into the summer, they are a relatively low energy user, but we're looking at about $50 a month. And so they are installing a 4.5 kilowatt system, and that means that April through November, they will have no energy bill except for the $5 service charge that everybody pays just to play with Idaho Power. And then the way this graph shows it is a little bit misleading, but this right here is how much extra credit they have after all these months of producing more energy than they use. And Idaho Power allows you to pass credit forward indefinitely. So what will happen after 1 year is all this credit will come and it'll make up for the fact that in these winter months of January and February, they use more energy than they produce. So this system should cover 98% of their typical electric consumption, which means that their monthly bill almost always will be $5. And I think that's the end of my time. Chris?
Yeah, do you want to do this one? Seems like more your style.
Okay. So the process, we'll do a site assessment. We'll send you a proposal. If you are happy with said proposal, we will have you sign a contract. And from there, we go into permitting. So this is that we have to get an electrical and building permit in most jurisdictions, not in Bellevue, fun fact, found that out yesterday. So all applicable permits, we will buy all the equipment, bring it in, and install it. Installation is actually, on most houses, pretty darn fast. That house that I just showed in Woodside, that was 3 people, 6 hours, in, out, done. We had a few inspections following, an electrical inspection, and then an inspection with Idaho Power. But in terms of the painlessness to you as a homeowner, this one's really easy. We're not in your living room making dust. It's not like the last remodel you did that you're trying to forget. So then we tell Idaho Power to come and do their final inspection, and they do a swap of your meter so that it's ready to act as a net meter, meaning that it's allowed to read the energy that you produce to credit against your consumption. When we finish, we'll give you all the tax credit information so that when the next tax year comes, you can hand that to the appropriate place. So, thanks.
So I wanted to take the opportunity to just talk very quickly about our commercial pricing. Do we have any kind of business owners that are here looking from the business perspective? Excellent. So same components that we're talking about, same warranties. And this pricing structure, in talking with Katie Bray, who understands these pricing structures, this is competitive with just about anywhere within the country. These are really low rates. You're getting the same components, same warranties, working with really similar groups. The incentives on commercial solar are actually probably a little bit better. Business owners can recover as much as 57% of the total cost of their system through the tax credit and then the accelerated depreciation, up to 27% with the accelerated depreciations. Another fact as well, farms and some small businesses may apply for the 25% grant from USDA's Rural Energy for America, or REAP program. And actually every business within Blaine County qualifies for the REAP program. We're seeing kind of on average between about 6 to 10 years on a payback on a commercial system. So again, the incentives are very good on commercial systems. Solar financing, I had Mike with DL Evans raise his hand. He's kind of leading the way as well down here in the South Valley on solar financing loans. We've talked with folks up in the North Valley and for Zion's Bank and DL Evans, which Mike is working for as well. He can talk with you a little bit more about this, but just to let you know, two good ways to finance here in Idaho. You can either do that through a home equity line of credit or a low interest loan from the Idaho State Energy Loan Program. The HELOC, the home equity line of credit, the rates are roughly 4%. Those are depending on the prime interest rate, your credit score, loan-to-value ratio, and the loan term. You need to have typically about 80% equity in your home and a minimum credit score of about 720. Benefits, that's that low interest rate and no or low origination fees, closing costs, penalties. The Idaho Energy Loan Program, state program for renewable energy projects, 4% again, fixed interest rate, 5-year loan repayment. Residential loans go up to $15,000, commercial loans up to $100,000, and the applications are evaluated using specific project specs and a credit analysis. And we just wanted to really quickly show you guys so you know what it looks like, their website. I think Mike also brought little handouts as well on the Idaho State Energy Loan Program. Now we wanted to open it up for questions and answers for you guys here for just the next little bit, and then we'll conclude.
We're going to be metered with Idaho Power, and they're going to be literally buy, as my understanding is, they buy back the excess energy. What if we want to have batteries and store excess energy?
Yeah, great question. So it's a little bit different than that they're buying it back. What they're really doing is that they are crediting the amount of energy that you produce against the amount that you use. And the only reason I make that distinction is to make it, buying it back makes it sound like they might write you a check one day. And that won't ever happen. So they will produce it, credit your bill for what you produce. Now, the second part of your question about the batteries, it is possible to do battery systems. Battery systems are a very good way to add, let's say, resilience to your home, especially in light of some of the electrical things that Amy was talking about. They do add a considerable cost. Generally, conversations about payback go away when we add batteries. We are shifting gears into resilience and having the ability to run your house when the power goes down.
Yes.
And it's totally possible to do. Basically, we put in batteries. We would run a sub panel so that you would tell us what items do you want to run in case the power goes out? Because the likelihood of running your whole house would be a battery bank that would be shocking. So what we would do is we'd say, power goes out, what do you want? Lights, well pump, etc. Maybe heat. You're going to run through that battery quick too, but it's totally feasible. It does cost more.
I have another part to the question, and that's that if you're producing, say you're producing energy, does Idaho Power have any way to take our energy that we're producing when we don't want them to in the future?
The question is, does Idaho Power have the ability to take our energy in the future if we don't want them to? You mean in case there's regulatory changes that stop net metering?
Or power, say a horrible situation, an unknown horrible situation.
Well,
Can we be independent of the power grid?
You can be independent of the power grid. We would have to do the infrastructure slightly different in your home, yes, than a typical net metering system, but it's possible. Yep.
And can they turn around and take power?
Depends on how your system's structured. If you're not connected to the grid, I mean, they can never take power. It's just you're feeding into the grid all the time. But there is the potential that they could change the regulations for net metering. So net metering allows us to sell into the grid and balance it out, and it helps make the financial sense. In Nevada, for instance, some of you may have heard what happened in Nevada. The utilities went to the Public Utilities Commission there, the state regulators, and they said, we don't want net metering anymore because we're not being paid enough to maintain the grid. There's people using too much solar and too little money is coming to us as the utility to maintain that grid. So there, they stopped the program and they didn't continue it even if you already had solar on your home. And there is right now a massive legal battle happening, and the casinos have all gotten together and said to the state legislator, you need to deregulate this. We don't want to deal with these utilities anymore. So it's a huge battle happening in Nevada. And our Utilities Commission staff, we talked to them ahead of time before we launched this program. We don't want people to be in a situation where you have solar on your home and they take away this net metering provision, because it will undermine the payback for you. And what we understand from the staff is that they understand this Nevada situation is not something that they want to see in Idaho. They don't have concerns that we have so much solar proliferating in Idaho that there is any near-term need to limit the amount of solar entering the system. You never know. There is always that unpredictability, but the more people who put solar on the roof, the more power we have to ensure that our regulators don't change these rules on us. And I was just contacted today by a group of national organizations who are mobilizing solar home and business owners to have that political voice at the state level, the national level, to prevent these kinds of moves by the utilities who are holding on with their fingernails to the old model rather than getting into this new opportunity they have in front of them. Does that help? Okay.
Yes, you mentioned that you'd be replacing the electric meter with a different type of Idaho Power meter.
So the question is about replacing the meter on this side of your house. The program is that you send in an application to Idaho Power when you want to do this. It's really easy. You tell them what kind of system you're going to put on and you send them $100. When you're done with the system, they replace your current meter, which basically goes one way from the grid in, and they replace it with a net meter. None of us would know it was any different if it didn't have a red sticker on it that said net meter.
Is this meter still communicating with Idaho Power through the power line communication?
Yes. Yes. Yep. For all practical purposes, you don't even know it's happened.
But it's not a wirelessly transmitting?
Nope, it's not a wireless, nope.
So my electric bill is, I don't know, average. My gas bill is more than average. I was the architect of my home. I've got a lot of windows. I push that envelope of window space to square footage, and I got a lot of windows. And my gas bill is large. I have heat radiant flooring. My real incentive would be to replace my gas bill. How can you help me?
So I'm going to start by saying that the price of natural gas is slightly less than 1/3 the price of electricity. So if in other words, natural gas is extremely cheap. It's roughly 2.5 cents per kilowatt if you do an energy conversion, whereas your price of electricity is 9 to 10 cents. So if we think about that graph that said, should I shovel my roof in the wintertime? Unless you have a lot of storage capacity on your home for solar thermal is when you heat hot water. That hot water could be used in lieu of the natural gas that heats your house. You can see a reduction in your natural gas costs. Just know that because the utility you're offsetting is so inexpensive that we take this kind of payback and we extend it considerably farther into the future. So it can be done with solar thermal. Installation may be a touch less expensive. Payback is considerably longer. The other thing you could do, electric systems for heating have become considerably more efficient in the last several years, and that's through electric heat pump technology. And so heat pumps are like 3 to 3.5 times more efficient than, say, electric baseboards. So for a house like you, it might be worth supplementing some kind of a heat pump, maybe part of like the electric mini splits. Those are heating systems that are very efficient. You could offset it with PV. And so basically, I think the ultimate answer is if we look at the total energy bill pie for your house, and you're saying, all right, well, who knows, 70% is gas and 30% is electricity, it's still worth offsetting that electricity first because it's the more expensive per unit of energy consumer that you have.
Okay, and just in general, so I got my heat radiant system redone as part of a remodel about 5 years ago, so it's relatively new. It's a good system. Ultimately, does it come down to replacing the gas-fired boiler with an electric boiler to still operate that heat radiant system?
We'd want to take a look at your bills, but if we took you from a 2.5 cents per kilowatt natural gas system and put in an electric boiler, the first thing you'd see is a price spike of your heating bill that's threefold plus. Okay, it would get it phenomenally more expensive to heat that house. So yes, we can then offset that with panels on the roof, but typically in a normal house where you've said I put a lot of windows, et cetera, the amount of solar panels that you'd need to offset that would be considerable.
Just add, as an alternative to switching to electricity, because he already has a thermal heat system, you could replace, like you said in the beginning, the natural gas with solar thermal, a solar hot water panel system on your roof that would heat that solar and tie into your radiant heating system. And so what you're going to want to do, I think, is really work with one of the installers after signing up to look at your bills and understand what your alternatives are.
So that would be the second section.
Yeah, and I would even maybe take it a step farther and say it's probably worth a general house energy audit. There's probably things going on that are, there may be lower hanging fruit that you want to combine with solar. Any other questions? Yes, sir. The question is, when you add batteries, can you interface with a whole home generator as well? I'm not 100% qualified to answer that. My understanding is that both your generator and your solar system have to be completely independent of each other. They both have separate disconnects. Disconnect is a little switch that goes on these systems that allows Idaho Power to turn them off in case of a maintenance issue. If somebody's working on the lines, they want to make sure that there's not power coming out of your generator or power coming out of your solar system. So I think that they would be independent. I'm not the guy on the team that would really know the answer to that very, very well. If there's somebody else, they can jump in here.
On the question of batteries, Elon Musk's battery or Powerwall, have you had any experience with those? Have you installed any of those?
Right now, that's still a wait list item. There's a lot of interest in that, and ultimately, they have packaged, my understanding is that they've basically packaged a battery system that is A little bit slicker, definitely a little bit sexier than your traditional battery pack that you'd see for a solar system. But ultimately, the kind of logic behind it is the same, is it can store a certain amount of energy with solar panels. Those systems can also be used if you have a tiered electric bill. So for example, some places, your price of electricity during the day is more expensive than it is at night. And so in those places, you could use a power wall to store energy from the grid during a cheap time, during a cheap time, and use it during an expensive time. We don't have that here.
But just in talking to Tesla, one of our thoughts was, let's say what happened in Nevada happened here, in worst case scenario where they took away net metering. You'd want to quickly get a battery system up on and disconnect from the grid so that you don't lose the financial benefit of it. That's my position, is I would quickly want to have batteries so that I'm not then losing all that money to Idaho Power. And so we've been talking to Tesla about, could we do a similar program like Solarize where we bulk order, and could that help? And the challenge is that in the near term, there is a wait list. That gigafactory they built outside Reno is starting to come online shortly. So what I'm hearing from people in the storage industry is the prices are coming down very fast. Other alternatives are coming to market, as well as that gigafactory is getting going. So for some of you who may want to do it right now, for resilience, that's one thing, but economically, you might want to wait 6 to 12 months and see where the market is and the availability is. And the good thing is these systems are being installed storage ready. I mean, you have the inverter in place. It's another trip to your home, so there's that cost, but it's not as if you have to do it all at once. So as you think about the costs and the benefits.
We're going to stick around, so feel free to come talk to us directly.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and please do stick around. We have sign-ups. Chris, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. Just one last take-home message. Thanks for everybody for coming. This works the more people that know about it, right? So tell your friends and neighbors it does take a village. We've had the open houses in several different neighborhoods. If you're interested in hosting a open house, if you've already got a proposal from one of our installers, please flag down one of us. We'd love to help you organize as well. Tabling at community events, door-to-door outreach, a neighborhood e-blast. Tell your friends and neighbors, okay? 80% of systems that are installed are within 200 yards of an existing system. Okay, so this is a neighbor talking with neighbor. This is a community program for this county and for this neighborhood, our larger neighborhood. So thanks again for your time. I hope you'll help us spread the word as well, and thanks.
One last pitch. Sorry, we didn't do this one thing, which I think people say it's dropped 80%, the prices of solar systems. Won't it just drop more? Should I wait 6 months, 12 months, and just see where it goes? And what we hear from people in the industry is that rate of dropping has lessened significantly, so it's pretty flat. It'll continue. There will be innovations in the market, but it's pretty flat at this point given the efficiencies they've pulled out of the existing panels. And so it's a great time to do it because through Solarize Lane, we're dropping that an additional 20%, and you're not going to see those gains in at least several years. So if you're looking at doing solar, that's why it's a good time to do it, is through this program. But feel free to ask follow-up questions as well. Thank you.
If you missed the June 30 sign up, sign your contract and all that, is there going to be a round 2 in Blaine County? Can you get in the future?
Unclear. We're going to see how this program goes. We'll see where the prices go. Certainly won't be in 2016.